Hi, everyone. Welcome to TMFF Talks. This is Kaius Tenchi from the Toronto Motorcycle Film Festival. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We've got a Q&A with Scott Englund, who is the filmmaker, director, writer, editor, producer of Never Ride Alone, the movie that we were featuring this weekend. I hope you got a chance to see it and saw some of the most spectacular riding, some of the most spectacular scenery. I hope you enjoyed the movie. So let me bring Scott online so we can have a chat with him. Hey, Scott.
Hi, Kaius. How are you?
How are you? Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Folks, if you're watching this and you've got a question for Scott or a comment, go into either YouTube or Facebook chat, wherever you're watching this from, and type up your comment, and we'll pop it up on screen, and Scott will answer it. Thank you. Okay, so Scott, why don't we start with what got you to Peru in the first place? Like, where are you originally from, and how did you get to Peru to take on this adventure?
Yeah. So I'm a California kid. I grew up in Northern California. Grew up on a little ranch and just kind of lived life, a fun life as a kid, and grew up, got off to college, ended up in Idaho, in the Pacific Northwest, and went to college, started a career in the insurance and financial business, and did that for quite a few years, and that ended up, all that started morphing, and next thing you know, it's kind of a long and complicated story, some ups and downs, but basically I had enough of corporate life. I realized that's not what I'm created to be. That didn't feel like that was my purpose, and so through a whole bunch of crazy doors opening up and things happening in our lives, my wife and we decided that we'd open our eyes to some crazy ideas. And next thing you know, we're on a plane with our two kids, two bags, two suitcases and a carry-on each, and on our way to Arequipa, Peru. And we ended up there with a mission organization that did all kinds of things. We worked with it was through a church, and we did a lot of church work. We did a lot of medical clinics. We did a lot of sports tournaments, working in just the communities of Arequipa and all around the southern portion of Peru. And that was about a year and a half of some of the greatest adventure of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I got myself into a pretty big job and worked my tail off, and it was a time of our lives. And after a year and a half, you really you don't get a chance to get totally accustomed to the culture, and you're still suffering a little bit. And like, as far as like figuring out how to get milk and get around town and communicate in the language and just the culture stuff. And we felt like we had suffered and done all the suffering and hadn't really experienced the benefit of all that suffering. And so we decided we wanted to stick around, and we changed our mission a little bit, went from that church organization, became independent. For lack of better terms, we were missionaries, is what that's what our ID card said.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, we weren't with a church organization anymore, but we were still missionaries. And our goal was to be social entrepreneurs, where we'd run businesses and give 100% of the profits away. And it sounds kind of crazy, but we had support from people like friends and family and people that we knew back in the States and other parts of the world that were basically allowing us to live there. And that allowed us as entrepreneurs to give 100% of the profits of the businesses away.
That's amazing. So you mentioned those things in the movie, right? There was the Moto Mission Peru.
Yep.
And then there was a cafe that I think you started as well, right?
Yeah. So the cafe was what took us from Arequipa up to Cusco.
Hmm.
And the cafe, we ran that for, I don't know, 6, 7 years, something like that. It was a great business, provided good source of income for a bunch of different projects that we were working with. And some of those projects are noted in the movie. The Altivas Canis Children's Project was our main one. But man, we had so many just cool experiences. There's a picture in the movie. A large group of well, there was a large group of kids that we supplied backpacks to, and the backpacks were full of school supplies.
I love that.
And the reason that happened, this isn't even part of the movie. Another crazy adventure. My wife and I were up just riding up in one of these backcountry communities, and they stopped us. They thought we were stealing things in their community. We were just riding through. There was a trail that ended up going right through the little community, and they stopped us and were asking us all kinds of questions. Wanted to see our ID. Wanted to know what we were doing out there. We had no business there, and I struck up a conversation. It was the mayor of the little town, and he ended up explaining to me kind of why they were questioning us, and we ended up striking a deal with them. And I came back with a whole bunch of volunteers and a whole bunch of backpacks full of school supplies. He'd given us a list of every kid in the whole community, and we raised enough money and supplies there in the cafe to go ahead and take care of that entire community of kids,
That's beautiful. That's awesome.
all on motorcycles. It was just it was a cool little adventure that I couldn't have planned if I
Yeah,
if I
I love that. I love that. Before I go any further, just got a comment here from Michael VR saying, "You got
uh,
this." I guess that's somebody that you know.
Michael VR.
Yeah, you got this, he says.
All right, I got this. Who's
Thanks, Michael. Okay, so let's like fast forward now. You start riding and exploring through the Andes, different trails, different paths. Um, just by watching the early start before you start, going on these big giant rides, uh, you've clearly got some riding chops behind you. There is no way I could do, even a quarter of what you did. So tell me a little bit about your moto background.
Okay, so I'm gonna say it's mentioned in the film. A good friend of mine named Scott as well. He was a friend of mine in college, and he was putzing around on a CR 500 two-stroke dirt bike, and kind of got me excited about it. And I ended up thinking, well, I got to have a big motorcycle that's that fast, or else I'll never be able to keep up. So I
Mm.
go out and I buy one, a CR 500, kind of like not my first dirt bike, but my first real dirt bike.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a monster, absolute monster. And I nearly killed myself a jillion times on that thing, but I had to learn how to ride and learn how to ride fast. And so that was I was early 20s, yeah, maybe early 20s, 1920, somewhere in there, and got my CR 500. And from that point on, motorcycles have been a big part of my life. Um, Fast forward that to 2000, about 2005 or 2006. Scott and I and a group of guys got together because we all watched the same film. We watched that Dust to Glory film, and I mentioned that in my film, and got us all excited about racing in the Baja. And so when that came about, I found out that Scott was interested in racing the Baja with his brother, and he had three of them already kind of ready to go. And then I come along, I'm like, I want to be part of this. I don't know who or how or how it's going to happen, but they said, hey, we need another rider, and so it just all kind of came together. I, being a guy that had zero race experience, I'd never raced a dirt bike in my life until Baja,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of had no business being out there either, but I trained like nobody. I was obsessed with how I trained. I didn't want to let those guys down, and it was one of those things where they had experience. They had done lots of racing and been riding all their lives, And I thought, man, if I screw this up for those guys and I don't get it across the finish line, I'm gonna feel terrible. So I made sure that I physically was in the best shape possible. There was no way I would have carried that motorcycle across the finish line. As long as you got it to me, I was going to get it across the finish line. And funny thing is, they put me at the back of at the very end. I was the last rider to get it. Odds are I would never even touch the motorcycle because we would have crashed out and not, didn't finish, prior to even me touching the bike. But I ended up getting the bike, and we were running way faster than the pack. And I ended up riding, it was like 4.5 hours of the hardest racing I have ever done and probably will ever do again in my life. But all the training, just all the riding that I did to get to that point of Baja, there was a whole lot of riding alone. If you could imagine, I thought my section was going to be at night. And so I would go out. I was in Idaho at the time, and we've got desert, lots of desert in Idaho. So I'd go out at crazy hours of the night and ride just all by myself out through the desert in the middle of nowhere and do these crazy night training rides. I don't know why my wife would even live through that, but she somehow just closed her mind off and let me do it. And I'd come back somehow, and I didn't kill myself somehow, or hit a cow or hit a deer. I don't know, but I somehow got back each time. And then we did the race, and I haven't taken my handles off the throttle or my hands off the throttle since since I started training for Baja. Your microphone.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to cough before.
Yeah.
So, as you were describing this, that no matter what, you were gonna carry that bike, over the finish line, like whatever it took. So that sort of made me think, like, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was that was clearly also evident in the movie as well, right? And you even said in the movie that you don't give up. There's nothing that's gonna stop you, and sometimes you push so hard, like you have such a hard time stopping, that you've got to complete what you started, that sometimes you put yourself at a lot of risk to do this, which we saw that in the movie as well. Where does that inner drive, that push, come from?
I've been that way for a long time. I had an interview with my mom in a film. She noticed that early on in my life when I was just a tiny kid. I was a stubborn, just wouldn't let it go. Just go until I literally physically couldn't go, and maybe a little bit beyond that. There's been a couple of things in my life that I've discovered about myself, and ways to just personally motivate myself. And one of those is to tell other people what I am going to do. And I think somewhere maybe deep inside me, I have a fear of not being able to answer that question of when they ask me, well, did you do that? And I don't want to say, no, I gave up like that. I don't know. I've got something weird going on in my emotion that I just hate that. And so if I really, really want to do something hardcore, real big, over my head, way beyond me, the only way that I can do it is to tell those people that I value and people, just everybody that I come in contact with, that this is what I'm going to do. I will do this. I am and I never use other words. I don't say I might do this or it's possible. It is I will, I am doing this. There's no wiggle room around it. And I found that's a really good motivator for me. And I know some people are like that, and not everybody, but that's how I roll.
So, I mean, I'm sort of like that. I also do that too. I tell people I'm going to do something, and that sort of makes me accountable for it.
Yeah, yeah.
But you're like at a different level, Scott. No, you are. So, again, going back to the movie, there's a part where you're trying to get up this steep incline. You keep coming down, and you say, I've moved 5 feet in an hour. In an hour. So, this was you sweating buckets, struggling at altitude, pushing hard for an hour. I could have told somebody that I will climb to the top, but after that hour, maybe before the hour, I would have said, all right, I'm done. But you don't, you
Gotcha.
keep going. Like it's amazing. So but again, so it's commendable, it's incredible, but again, it could be dangerous. And it's amazing that you even recognize that, right?
Yeah.
But you don't let that deter you, clearly.
It changes the way I view the whole situation. And in that scene in the film, that's Pacha Tucson. And I had, I'm going to say 30, 40 attempts at trying to get to the top of that mountain, which alone is probably kind of what you're talking about. Is it
Mm.
just this guy just, what an idiot. He just keeps going and going and going. But it's every time I would try it, it was a different ride. I might be on
Mhm.
the same path or the same, the same hillside, but every time it was different. And some, even it wasn't like every time I made it further. There were some times I'd go up there and I would make it halfway as far as I did 3 months ago, and devastating. Like it really bothered me.
Mhm.
But I had put it in my mind that I'm going to do everything it takes to get to the top of that mountain. I wanted that reward. I wanted to take a picture of my motorcycle on top of that mountain. And
Yeah.
the last attempt that I had was the one that I filmed. And after that, I said, nope. I'm satisfied with what I've done. I put more than my 100%
Yeah.
into that, and I yeah, it wasn't a failure. It definitely did not feel like a failure. It
Yeah.
was one of those spots where, man, this this mountain got me. But you know what? I am a much better guy because I kept after it. And yeah, I might have lost that battle, but I'm strong. I'm able to ride. I'm able to push further than anybody in their right mind would do. And that was the perfect training for what I needed to do on the Pumahuanca route. It
Yeah.
was exactly what I was hoping to accomplish.
Yeah. So I'm gonna push this even further to like show you what I saw, like an example of you like keep pushing and pushing. No, because I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean it's like it's amazing to me, right? And I wish, I would have a little bit more of that, right? It's amazing to me. So you're riding and you're going through these struggles. What was the name of that incline that you said where you move 5 feet
Uh,
an hour?
that's Pacha Tucson.
Pachatusan. Okay.
Pacha
So
Tucson.
you're there struggling for an hour. There's other places where you're going, your back tires bouncing over everything, you're falling down. Like you're not having a good time. You might be having a good time, but you're not having a good time. It's a struggle.
It's yeah.
Definitely it's work.
Hmm.
Um, but you don't just push to make that. You also have to think about filming of it because you didn't have a camera crew. It was just
Yeah.
you filming everything. So it's like I'm sliding down this mountain. My motorcycle is sliding down this mountain. But hang on, let me go set up my camera over here. Make
Yeah.
sure that it's framed properly so it could capture, this moment. Go back, deal with that, then go grab the camera again, pick it up, continue your journey. Like you've made something that's already super difficult even more difficult,
And
right? Because
that's if the camera was on.
yeah, because again, I would have maybe me started with the intent of filming this, gone through the process, and after a couple of difficulties, I would have just said, "Screw the camera, like forget about this movie business. I'm gonna like move on to continue my goal, which is to getting to the top." I would have pushed for that and let go of the camera.
Wow.
Um, and you didn't, so it was amazing. So, but hey, we benefited from that because we got to see this awesome story. So amazing.
Well, keep in mind the goal there was it wasn't just to reach the top. It was also to learn how to film
Hmm.
at with zero energy left. And I had to keep my head on straight enough that I could, be able to, get the, figure out where I wanted the drone up in the air as it's just
Hmm. Hmm.
sitting there. Um, I got to be in the right mind to you know I know I got 13 minutes before that thing falls out of the sky. I got to hurry up, and I try to get up the mountain as high as I could and then run back down and grab my controller and land the drone and change out the battery and do it all again. But a lot of that, it added another element of frustration, but it also it was training. And so I knew that if I got better and better and better at doing that on Pacha Tucson, then when I hit the Pumahuanca trail, I knew that I would have the wherewithal to be able to do it.
Yeah. Scott, talk to us a little bit about the physical and mental challenges of riding up Pumahuanca, because and see if there's some way to you could make it relatable to us, because most of us, I'll speak for myself, don't have that kind of riding skill and probably will never get a chance to experience something, at that level. So talk to us a little bit about what it was like in terms of, like, that exhaustion that you must have felt for that whole day, dealing with altitude, the physical and mental effort that was into it. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I would start with the physical. Um, I had a pretty good ride just to get to the bottom of the difficult stuff. And I'm not going to say my tank was even halfway full by the time I got to the difficult stuff, but I definitely burned a lot of energy prior to getting to the complicated and really physical part of the ride. And time was part of the issue too. So I knew that if I dawdled around too much, I would never be able to get where I needed to go. And I kind of had my points set up that if I have to reach the Abra, which when I say the Abra, that's the peak. That's the it's not the peak of the mountain. It's the saddle, I guess, that the ridge that drops you down on the other side. And if I didn't get there by a certain time, I had to go back. There's just no way I could. I didn't feel comfortable keeping on with the journey unless I met those goals. And so time was putting a lot of pressure on me, which makes you ride faster than you normally should. You take less breaks. You take less camera shots. You do all these things as fast and quick and as efficient as you can. And so by the time I got into the difficult stuff, uh, I I was tired. I wasn't tired, but I was starting to feel um, okay. I've got a long ride ahead of me. I got to really be careful with how I do this. And so I just went into this hyper concentrated, focused state of mind where I just rode fast, and I knew all the locations that I wanted to put my cameras and get those set up. I had kind of scouted as much out as I could on my previous attempts, and so when it was time, I just like I would stop my motorcycle. I would drink some electrolytes. I would eat a granola bar. I would set up my camera. I'd get a breath of air. I would take a quick 1-2 shot, throw everything back in the pack, and get going. And the thing is, I did that so many times. It just after a while, you get tired of setting up the camera because you can
Sure.
feel it. You can feel it sapping your energy. And so I got up real close to the Abra, and I don't know if you'll notice it, but in the film, there's a lot less pictures of the last third of the ride. I don't think you'd probably even notice, but there's a lot less pictures. I was going to do a full on interview at the top. No way, absolutely not. I couldn't even stand up hardly.
Mm.
And you're at 17,000 feet, and you don't have enough oxygen in the air
Right.
to have a conversation like this. You just want to get off that mountain because it's terrible. And so I'd made it. So I knew that I had to keep going over the hill. And there was a sense of, okay, so I was just beat exhausted at that point. But I was at a decision point where if I keep going, I can't go back the way I came. I won't be able to go back. And there was a section on the other side, all the part down below that I was facing, a big chunk of that I had never seen before. I didn't even know if it was passable. And if I got down there, a couple hundred, meters of elevation or feet of elevation and realized that I can't get past, I'm spending the night up there. I'm probably not going to make it.
Were you
And so
ready for that?
no, I couldn't carry
Mm.
anything. I literally had to skinny my pack down to film stuff and just the bare essentials.
So what did you take? So beyond the film stuff, what did you take with you?
So, funny thing is, the things that I threw out, or the first aid kit, like things that are really important.
Yeah.
Um, as far as the cold goes, I just had what I was wearing. I didn't have anything else. Um, I had some layers on, and as I got higher up in altitude, I put more layers on. But the higher up in altitude, the more you're working, so the more you're sweating, the more heat you're using, and so you got to find a happy medium in there, so you don't have too many clothes on and get sweaty and wet, and then freeze to death if you stop, and then also have enough that when you're on a slow ride, and not burning the energy, you're going to be warm enough.
Mm.
And so I literally didn't have hardly anything. I had food, um, I had my little energy turds, I call them, and which are really good because there's a lot of energy in a little small amount. And I had
Mhm.
those. It's like clay, and so I could like mold those and put those in all the little parts and places and nooks and crannies in my drone backpack and all my pockets. I had those things everywhere.
And how
So
much what and liquid? Obviously, you must have like sweated buckets this whole
oh
thing,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. I had I discovered that electrolytes is really my key because I'm going to sweat out so much water. I got to replace my
Yeah.
electrolytes.
Yeah.
And so there's water in the ground. In Peru, though, you don't really want to drink that water if you can help it. You could filter it. I didn't bring a filter because I knew that that's more weight that I just don't want to. I don't want to have. And so if I had to drink the water, I would have drank the water. I'm up at 15,000 feet. You would think it's healthy, um, but yeah, if you experience much time in Peru, you'll find somebody always upstream washing their clothes with Tide detergent, doing weird things, putting fuel in the water system, and just crazy things like that. So you just don't drink the water
Yeah. Yeah.
anywhere. But I would have if I had to. And so, yeah, I carried as much as I could and tanked up as much as I could. So right before I left town, I threw back a whole bunch of Gatorades and electrolytes and ate a big bunch of food and just went for it.
Wow. Now, what about on the way down? Because I would think, I mean, the amount of effort that you expended going up, right?
Yeah,
Now you got to come back down. You're tired, like
yeah,
you're physically done. You've probably dumped everything that you had, out of you, right? Effort wise.
yeah,
You're mentally tired, maybe a little foggy because of it. That's like a recipe for, an accident, right? That
yeah.
must have been scary coming down as well.
That was, and that was where I had to make that decision. So when I got to the top, I had to be in a good enough mind that I could rationally process. Okay, how am I feeling? Am I at 80% or am I am I all spent? I don't know. I need to look at myself and determine if I think I can make this. And I had I this is going back to that personal motivation, but I had told myself and those around me that I'm doing this ride today, and I'm gonna report on it tomorrow. I will be
Mm.
on the other side. I'm not coming back the same way I came. I will not. I won't. I didn't. And so when I got up there, that all started playing into my mind, going, I'm not going to tell those people I chickened out and turned around. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to keep going as
Yeah.
scared as I am. I'm going to, I have to go down this hill. And I remember I remember the feeling when I decided, okay, I'm doing it. I'm on my bike and I let off my front brake and I started rolling, and my heart's just pounding like crazy. And I remember the fear that I had, because I saw how steep it was right there at the beginning. And once I got down past the first couple of little switchbacks, I'm done. I don't even know if I'll be able to walk back up and over. So I just jumped on and pounded it out, and kind of I just had that little mental commitment that that I got this. I the failure is not an option on this one. I am going to get to the bottom of this canyon, and it might be in a body bag, but at least I'm going to try it on a motorcycle today. So I took off, and the whole emotional process of that experience up on top of that mountain was I tried to give a little bit of that into my film. Really hard to put you the audience into that same mindset. I tried, but I don't even know if I if I accomplished it the right way. But I remember the fear, and that really pushed me down that mountain.
Yeah,
And
I believe it.
once I got down that mountain a little ways, I remember that I started cramping. My arms and my quads were just cramping, and I it was so bad that I'd have to stop and like stretch out my arms, and I would get cramps. I was getting cramps in my neck and like weird places that I didn't even know I could get cramps. And I remember just thinking I'm either dead tonight, or I got to get down to the bottom of this canyon, and I just kept going. And
Amazing.
yeah, it was super crazy afternoon in my life, one of the craziest.
I bet. Before we go on, got this message from James Spitzer. We missed you
Haha.
here, brother.
So James is one of the guys in the film. You'll actually see him in the film. He's one of my Peruvian hermanos, my good friend of mine in Arequipa. And
Nice.
yeah, so he knows this trail.
Um, so okay, you here we are now. You've gotten down. You've made this movie. Um, why did you want to make a movie? Let me ask you that. And like, what were you hoping to get out of it? And did you get what you wanted out of it, or something else, perhaps?
So it kind of just I kind of stumbled into this passion for making film. Started with a GoPro. I thought it'd be kind of fun to film some cool riding adventures, and so I started carrying a GoPro, and I started looking at the footage, and it's like, okay, it's the same thing over and over. It's just a bunch of shaky dirt bike riding. It's great for me and whoever was with me to watch that, but beyond that, nobody wants to watch 40 minutes of a single track ride. It's just
Sure.
not that exciting. And somewhere along the way, I came up with a totally different movie plan, and thought it would be really cool to have a 10-year reunion of our Baja 1000 team and bring all those riders down to Peru and do another impossible, stupid, ridiculous adventure. Plan a few things and just let it go and see where we end up. And the idea was we would start our ride in the Amazon jungle and ride all the way to the Pacific Ocean through the Andes. So we would head west until we hit the beach. No trail, no route, no specific way to do it. We would just go from mountaintop to mountaintop to mountaintop till we hit the beach. That was going to be a cool movie. Problem was we couldn't round up all the parts and pieces, all the people. We had some medical issues with some of the riders, and it just wasn't going to be able to be done. And so I had already kind of thought, okay, if I can't do that, why don't I still want to make a film? I don't know. It sounds like fun to make a film. So I kind of thought, well, if I'm going to make a film, I want to be the one that calls all the shots and be the one responsible for getting it done. I don't want to have to rely on somebody else healthy enough, or is somebody else going to be able to get the time off to come down and do it, or whatever. I wanted to be the guy that was responsible for the whole thing. And so I decided that why don't I film one of these adventures of another impossible trail, but just do it by myself. And I had never seen a film where it was done solo, where the guy that's actually being filmed is the cameraman, other than just a simple GoPro you know you know vlog kind of thing. And so uh, that just started morphing into this idea. And I remember thinking, well, that trail has knocked me down a jillion times. Why don't I make that my goal? Like that'll be the main focus of the film. And it just started from there. And I went out and I started practicing on different angles and different shots and learning, different equipment. And I did it really on a shoestring. I think I got less than a couple $1,000s of equipment. I shot the thing on my Samsung smartphone, my S7, and I had some crazy things. But I remember on my drone I had filters for my drone, for the
Mhm.
camera on the drone, and I could put those same filters on my Samsung camera, and I'd use this little plastic putty, and I'd stick it right on the camera, and it would give me a really cool filter effect on my Samsung, which nobody else had that cool filter on their S7, because nobody would put a filter like that on their phone. It ended up getting some really cool shots, and it allowed me to do some cool things with coloring and so forth. And I started getting the bug. Like that was a really cool shot. I'm going to go out tomorrow and see if I can make that one even better. And I would look at YouTube tutorials and figure out how people were getting cool shots. And I'd go out and practice and try it. And sometimes I'd mess up and come out with a really great shot. And then sometimes I would go out and get the one I was looking for. And sometimes I'd do hours and hours thinking I got something good. I'd get home and I'd have a strap hanging in the camera, or something would be all glitchy and have to throw that away. But yeah, I just kind of developed this passion to tell my story via the video. Uh, Somewhere along the way, it wasn't anything that I ever thought I'd do when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like literally before I started Moto Mission, this would be the last thing I would have thought of.
Cool. And then like it's all of that transformed into making this feature length film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And then you took that film, and I know it went to a couple of theaters, and it was even shown at the Portland Motorcycle Film Festival. And
yeah.
you got a chance to go and experience that. What was that like for you?
So Portland was fantastic. It was a life-changing experience. It sounds silly, but that was the first time I got to see my film on a big screen.
Wow.
And I remember like somewhere in the middle of this thing, after I spent hours and hours on in front of my screen editing, and I remember thinking, oh, that would just be the coolest thing to ever see my film on a big screen. Like that'll ever happen. But how cool would that be if it did? And here I am in the middle of I think it was called the old theater that they had. I think it was the Hollywood Theater. I think
That's right.
right downtown, Old Town Portland. It's a cool old theater, and my wife and I are sitting in the middle of the theater. Got a whole bunch of rowdy motorcyclists. They're enjoying the food and the drink and the movies, and I'd seen all the other films, and I'm thinking, man, why do they have me up here? I don't know if I'm not that caliber. Anyways, I thought, oh shoot, I'm scared. They're gonna start throwing beer cans at the screens, and I'm like, oh gosh, okay, here it comes. It's about time for movie, and my wife and I are kind of squished down in our seats, wondering what's gonna happen.
Did
And
they
the first,
introduce you at this point, like
it was
before it even started?
yeah, it was real.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, hey, we like to say thank you, Scott, and your wife for coming and
Okay.
joining us. And
So
so
now
like
you're like sinking in the chair like
the
this.
pressure was on. The pressure was on, and I could like all the staring was right here at my head. And oh gosh, this better be good. Anyway, so the lights go out, and I can hear my voice, or I could hear my voice on the telephone, and or the opening scene, and I remember my heart's just racing, and my wife's like squeezing my arm like it's almost blue, and the first scene's kind of it's got a good capture, get you. And I remember looking at the screen and seeing some of the heads in front of me, and you could kind of start seeing people's body, moving back and forth. And I realized, I kind of looked around, I could see people's faces, and they were stuck to the screen. And I'm like elbowing my wife. I'm like, I think we got him. I think they like it. I can't believe it. I think they like it. And I just kept nudging her the whole time. Every time something would happen and people would go, "Whoa!"
Yeah,
And it was a highlight. I can't even tell you the joy. It was such a fun
that's
night
awesome.
to be able to experience that for the first time on a big screen, which was a dream come true. And then to have people like respond and react and emotionally connect with that sweat that I dripped off my nose up there on that doggone mountain while I was pushing my bike, trying to get up. And those people were right there with me, and
Yeah,
I felt that. It was such an incredible moment. And
that
so
is amazing.
yeah, I won't
That's
forget
the
that one.
beauty of like movies in a theater.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm really glad you got to experience that. That's awesome.
yeah,
It's definitely something that I'm sure will stick with you for your life for
yeah,
sure. Yeah, awesome.
absolutely.
So, where are you now, Scott? Are you still riding? Did you do any more crazy rides? What have you been up to lately?
So since the movie came out, we've migrated back to the U.S. to Northern California, real close to where I grew up. Um, I live in the Sierra Nevada mountains, full of some of the
Oh,
coolest dirt
yeah,
bike
yeah,
riding
yeah.
in the Western United States. And yeah, I'm riding. I ride a lot. It's my thing. So get a chance to explore as much as I can. My whole family we're into riding and exploring and seeing the backcountry, and we're right in a good spot for all of that. So
Yeah,
we're happy to be
definitely.
here. Peru is that was a chapter in our lives that we'll never forget. We're thankful that we did that, but the chapter was done. We felt like it was our time to move on and tackle something else. And who knows? We've got some. I guess it was a big deal to move back to the States, and almost more of a big deal to move back to the States than it was to move to Peru in the first place. Uh, just the whole culture thing. You think, well, I'm an American. I just I grew up here. It'll be easy to just jump back into life. And being out of the country for 10 years, it's not like that. The country has changed, and it's
Sure.
left me behind and my family behind. And so when we got here, a lot of crazy things just culturally. You feel weird. You don't fit in like you feel like you used to,
How
as
long have you
everything
been
is.
back now?
We're about 2 years now.
Are you still feeling like that, or do you feel like you've settled back into things?
We've settled back. I would say 95% maybe.
Okay.
I remember thinking how crazy it was to walk in front of the grocery store in a parking lot, because you would never walk in a parking lot in Peru without stopping for every car. And here, every car stops for you. And so like I would catch myself waving people on, like, I'm not gonna jump out in front of you. You're gonna run me over. And they're waving me on like, come on, what are you, crazy? Go. I'm a car. Of course you get the right of way. You're a
Hmm,
pedestrian.
hmm.
Oh no, 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 not gonna do it. And so I've had a bunch of those little weird things that have like that they still crop up every once in a while. But they're getting that slowly kind of getting out of my system, I think. It's been a couple of years, so I think it's about time to let some of those things go.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Got another message here from Van Gates. Love the
Yeah.
film, Scott. Bring back some epic memories.
Right on. So Van was the first customer I ever took on that trail, the Pumahuanca trail. And in the film, you'll see when the bike gets it's over on the side and we're getting it welded up. That was that trip, and that was the first time I had we discovered that trail that day. And I at that point I vowed to come back and get further up and further up, and certainly Van was part of that deal. So yeah,
There was
hey Van,
there was the guy in the movie who lost his bike. Ben,
yes,
was it, if I
Ben,
remember correctly?
yes, Ben,
I mean, that was, my heart was up here, when I first saw that.
yeah.
Uh, do you know anything about him? Does he still ride? And by any chance, you guys still keep in touch?
Absolutely.
Really?
You don't go through an experience like that
Yeah.
without without some long term connection. Pretty much, and I can say that even speaking like about Van, um, every one of the tours that I took in Peru was a trip of a lifetime for me. It was one of those trips of a lifetime for most of those customers, but it was also one for me, and I had dozens of them. They were happening all the time, and I remember very distinctly every one of those, and the little details. They were such good experiences. But Ben, his older brother is Scott, who got me into dirt biking in the first place. My buddy from college that had the CR 500, and Ben and I have, yeah, we cross paths a lot. He's lives just a few hours from here, and we've spent some time riding together. I ended up going out on a big dirt bike trip out in the Nevada desert. Um, they do a big memorial ride for for Scott and Ben's dad every year, and I joined up for that and had a great time. And yeah, I love those guys. Scott and Ben are just a solid group of fellas, and just to see how Ben dealt with that whole thing. I remember the emotional, man. That was a heavy afternoon,
I bet.
night. We shed a lot of tears. I remember crying at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, just like I couldn't sleep. I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't believe Ben's not dead. How did that happen?
Yeah.
And somehow we made it all work. We got him home,
Amazing.
and I didn't have to tell I didn't have to tell my good friend Scott, Ben's older brother, that I just killed his brother.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, don't even think about that.
Yeah,
That would not have been, that would have been very hard.
yeah,
Okay. Um, I missed this comment from Michael before. He asked, "How long have you been racing?" This popped up, I think, when we were talking about Baja.
yeah. So yeah, my first race was the Baja 1000 in 2007. It was
That
the
was your
40.
first race?
That was my first race,
Jeez,
and
man.
scared me to death. I had no business being there, but I like I said, I trained really well. The guys had a lot of confidence in me. I I guess I proved to them that I was going to do what they needed me to do,
Yeah.
and I was able to get the bike across the finish line. I got to take the bike across the finish line at the end of the Baja 1000. It was a crazy day. I can't even believe I got to do that. But yeah, that was my first race. Since then, I hadn't really raced as far as like actual like racing in the U.S. I never raced, and so when I got to Peru, um, they had a bunch of like not a bunch, but they had some motocross races and different, just kind of they're pretty podunk kind of races that
Hmm.
you didn't really like. There was no flaggers or anything, really dangerous stuff, and but I thought, what the heck? It's just a bunch of good old boys. Let's get together and we'll have a race. And so I jump in. I put my little, I put my entry in, and here's this crazy gringo with long hair and a beard, and on this big old desert bike. Didn't even have a motocross bike. I'm out there jumping these triples and doing all the motocross stuff on my big old desert tank, and I I did all right. So they kind of thought that I was some kind of, I don't know, either a crazy or pretty good rider. So I was able to win a few races and at least give them a run for my money. And and then not too long thereafter, the hard enduro thing really started exploding. and big group of guys in Lima, the capital of Peru. There was a big community out there that was really big into the hard enduro racing. They were getting groups together to go to Romania, to Romaniacs and Erzberg and all those things, and all of a sudden a couple of the guys put together a race organization and start their first hard enduro race. And I remember, I'm going to give that a shot. I think I can. We'll see how I do. And went out there and got my rear end handed to me, and had a blast doing it. And realized that the next year I got to prepare a little different. Came back the next year, and I always did really well. I had fun doing it, and that was kind of more legitimate racing. Got to race with some really big hitters: Mario Roman, Kyle Redmond, Corey Graffunder, Peter Weiss. Some really good racers that you may have heard of, and it's kind of fun to race with those guys. Funny story, I'll tell you this: we were in the finals of the prologue, and I made the finals. I think they took the top 16. And funny thing is, we took off, and I was getting lapped by, I think it was Mario Roman, Kyle Redmond, and Corey Graffunder were 3 bikes right in a row, and they were getting ready to lap me, and there wasn't anybody else in the picture except for me in the front, and then these 3 guys lined up. And I had that picture somewhere. I should have put it in my movie because it looked like I was beating
that you were leading
the top guys in the world, but they were lapping me probably on the first lap.
That's funny.
Yeah, but had some really good times racing in Peru. But I like to race. I've thought about. I think maybe another Baja adventure might be on my list somewhere in the future. I keep dreaming about it, so maybe it'll stick, and I'll start telling people that that's what I'm going to do.
There you go. Just start saying that you're going to do it, and then before you know it.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Scott, I want to thank you again very much for making the movie and for allowing us to show it as part of TMFF Cinema. Really enjoyed watching it and really enjoyed chatting with you. This was awesome. Thanks for the chuckle. My cheeks hurt from laughing. I want to just end it maybe with, I got this comment from James over here. He's just saying what Scott was able to achieve here in Peru, Cusco, is something us Peruvians will still look up for best rides of our lives. ... so far.
Right on.
So awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Scott. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Well, thank you, Caius. I appreciate the another shot at being able to show my film in a good venue, and so I appreciate that so much.
Thanks. All right, I'm gonna head out with some outro music. Hang in there, because I'm just gonna wrap it up with you when we're out. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.